Welcome everyone to Sunday Online. Happy Valentine's Day. It's great to have you all joining us. This is Sally and I'm Mark. And wasn't it great to have that video just now? Those words from 1 Corinthians 13 talking about God's love for us, what his love looks like, and then our response to that love.
And we're going to take some time now to worship, to be focused on God's love for us and our love for him as we respond to him.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you have been so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. And you have been so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. And you have been so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. And you have been so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99.
Many of you will be aware that Lent begins this week. On Tuesday, it's Pancake Day, or Shrove Tuesday to give its proper name, and the following day, Ash Wednesday, is when Lent begins, in the lead up to the wonderful celebration that comes at Easter. And this year, we are hoping that everyone in the church family will join us in some Easter reflections as we prepare for this important moment in the church year. And so we have encouraging you to join us in using this little booklet of daily reflections. They've been written by Tony Rees, who many of us will know. Tony has recently died, and after his death, his son discovered this book of Easter reflections. It's going to be published soon, but in the meantime, his son has made it available to all the churches in Frinton to use. If you get an email from the church, you will have received this already in a PDF form. If you get a mailing from the church, you'll have had a copy already. But if you would like to pick up a hard copy to use during Lent, then there will be some available in a box outside the church from tomorrow morning. So we really encourage you to join us as we prepare together for this exciting time of year.
Great, it's a fantastic set of readings that, so do join us, as Sally said. And we've got a thank you to make to somebody who is and remains anonymous. Do you know what? For the last few months, most weeks we've received a letter from somebody who describes themselves as being a friend of our church from the 1970s and 1980s. And they're still in touch with the church, and they're following what we're doing. And they send us some really encouraging letters, some scriptures, some prayers, and also, bless them, some money to help with the costs of the church at this time. So if you're watching, thank you so much. It really means a lot. And just be encouraged, church family, that there's people out there who are praying for our church at this time and encouraging us in lots of different ways. It's fantastic, isn't it?
It is. It's really great.
Really good. And we've got some church family news, because obviously it's been snowing this week, and we've had the ice and the snow, and many of the church family have been out and about enjoying the snow, and we've got some photos of these people. So
we have. So here's the Pratt family with their snowman. Rather impressive picture there of them enjoying themselves. And here we got Claire Marable and Kelly Beals, both out on their sledges. I think they're both being pulled by their husbands.
It's fantastic.
Looks really fun, doesn't it? Ariella and Phoebe have got this portable fire which they take out with them. And Sammy was saying it's really great because she can keep warm in the cold. And here we can see them toasting some marshmallows.
So is the fire for Sam, or is the fire for the marshmallows?
Well, I think both, really.
That's fantastic.
Looks great, doesn't it? And then we've got Josh and Daniel Harris with their lovely little snowman. I like the hat there, it's great. Look like they've had a really good time making that. Claire Thurston wrapped up very well against the cold weather with Becca, and Josh and Imi Halls also out having a great time. And then finally we've got a photo of Shanti, which was sent in by Peter Simpson. Shanti, as you may know, cooks food and delivers food for people, and she wasn't put off by the snow. She still went out and delivered food to those who had ordered it.
Round of applause for Shanti.
Well done, Shanti.
Have you sampled Shanti's food during lockdown?
Yeah, amazing.
It's incredible,
Absolutely
isn't
amazing.
it? If you haven't done, get in touch with Shanti, and she can drop some food around to you. It's fantastic. It's really good. Some videos as well, I believe.
A couple of videos to finish with. So here we have Tilly Gray, who apparently loves making snow angels. We've had several videos of Tilly making a snow angel. This one is just near the church, as you can see. Looks really fun.
This one. So Chris Halls was dropping around our house to pick up some church keys. The boys found out. They made some snowballs, which they brought indoors. Chris rang on the doorbell, and they pelted him with snow, which clearly he wasn't expecting. Our dog enjoyed that as well.
Brilliant.
You can hear the dog barking, but that was fantastic.
Brilliant.
They got their own back on Chris. It was fantastic. Really good stuff.
Hello.
Hello.
You may have approached this weekend with great anticipation. or it may be no different to those that have already passed by in the last few months. But for some of us, this weekend will hold its fair share of trepidation, or perhaps you're just somewhere in between. Our prayers today reflect the Father's heart for each of us and the overwhelming measure of his love as he expands our horizons and gives us the ability to see things we've never seen before. Just like Moses, we're on a faith journey of discovery. Shall we pray? Lord, for the years your love has kept and guided, urged and inspired us, cheered us on our way, sought us and saved us, pardoned and provided. Lord of the years, we bring our thanks to you today. Holy Spirit, continue to fill our hearts with hope and faith to trust in your promises. Help us to believe your word instead of our fears. Help us to focus on your presence and not our disappointments. Comforting God, waiting can be so hard for us. Sometimes the road is cold and dark and lonely. We may not know where we're going or how long the journey will take. Help us to trust you for everything we need. Forgive us when we've depended on other people, our jobs, and our own plans instead of yours. When you give us direction, Lord, help us to obey in confidence and to depend on you, knowing that your ways and your provision is always best. Faithful God, fill us with your sustaining grace when we are tired or troubled. When the things of life are unplanned, unrelenting and undeserved, when they hurt the most, fill our minds with your word. Let it comfort, strengthen, soothe and energise us to carry on, to keep us focused on the hope of heaven, not just on the here and now. Father, we miss our church community, the chatter and the warmth of good fellowship. Thank you for the people who are a blessing to us, for family and friends and neighbours, for our church family, for the leadership, for colleagues, for leaders and key workers. Thank you for the many ways you use these people to meet our needs. But Lord, please equip them and us with your wisdom and understanding as they make decisions that will often challenge us. Thank you that we have a loving Father who is working things out for our good. We can have every confidence that the one who holds us in his hand will never let us go. Thank you that you love us on our good days and our bad days, when we feel it and when we don't. When we don't feel loved or lovable, please remind us that your word says you love us so much, you gave up your beloved Son for each of us. Thank you, Father, that you are both loving and just, and that there is nothing that will separate us from the love of God through Jesus Christ.
Lord, for ourselves, in living power remake us, self on the cross and Christ upon the throne. Past put behind us, for the future take us, Lord of our lives, to live for Christ alone. Heavenly Father, each difficulty we now face is an opportunity to see you at work as we trust in your timing. As you help us to navigate the uncertainties of this journey, please help us to keep our eyes focused on you, to guide us through each day in our thoughts, words and actions. When we call on you to remind us that though we may speak in the smallest whisper, you are close enough to hear us. Let God's peace infuse every part of the day as life's demands pull at all sides, and be reminded that God is with us in the midst of our daily routine. Often it is in the middle of the most mundane tasks that you are with us. Thank you that your love stays simple, steady and strong. Almighty God, fill our hearts with your love to untangle our regrets and disappointments. Refresh us and break down the strongholds that threaten us. We know that what happens to us matters to you. So we pray that you will help us to change the way we think, so that in turn it will change the way we feel. We pray for opportunities to show practical love, care and thoughtfulness to our families and friends, our neighbours and colleagues. Remind us that the only ability we need to deliver your love is our availability. May we always trust that every single act of love bears the imprint of God. Amen.
Amen.
I'll be my anthem
If you've been tuning in the last week or so to Sunday Online, you'll know that we've started a new series looking at Moses and following God into the unknown, recognising that life is so unknown. And isn't that true at the moment? As part of this series, we've invited you to send us your testimonies, maybe written or maybe on video, that we could share and encourage each other about how we are following God in unknown and uncertain times. And David Gibbons has emailed me just to share his testimony, his story. And of course, many of you will know that Rosemary, David's wife, passed away just a couple of weeks ago. And David in his email just shared that life is unknown at the moment. He's walking through, as we looked at last week, loss and grief, and just how God is going to bring him through that time. And David was reminded of an old hymn that I'm sure some of you will remember. And the words say this: "If we could see, if we could know," we often say, "but God in love a veil doth throw across our way. We cannot see what lies before, and so we cling to him the more, and then calls us to trust and obey." And that's so
Wonderful.
true, isn't it? And David, our prayer for you is that as you go through this unknown time, and as you prepare especially for Rosemary's funeral and saying goodbye to her, that you would know that you're clinging to God and that you will cling to him even more, but also that you'll know that he's got you in his grip as well at this time.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of you who've sent in testimonies. Please do keep sending them in. It's so encouraging to hear from you. So we're going to show now a testimony from Jane Ward, and many of you will know that Jane is suffering with cancer. She's over in Ireland at the moment, and here she is sharing her story with us.
My name's Jane Ward. I would like to share with you my update where I feel I've followed God into the unknown. I'm currently in Ireland. The reason I'm here is because I have breast cancer that metastasised into my bones, and I came over here initially for scans which weren't available at home for me. I'm currently staying at my sister's and brother-in-law's, but when I came for my scans, I was privileged enough to be asked if I wanted to attend a trial, a clinical trial, which was only available to 10 people over here. And it's for people with my type of cancer. It's not available in England. And whilst on the trial, coronavirus took effect, and I now can't go home. I'm over here for the duration until things ease down again. But there's lots of things that have taken a really good turn. Whilst I'm over here, my brother-in-law is a vet, and in his veterinary practice, the receptionist left. So he asked me if I'd like to cover the role, and I really love it. I used to teach at home, and swapping students for animals works really well. Also, my family came over for Christmas, which was so lovely to see them, and they left our golden retriever with me. So currently my day starts at 6:30, and I take Chester for a walk. Then I go to work in the morning at the vet's. Then in the afternoon I take Chester for a long walk unless I've got treatment. And the treatment I'm currently having is working really well because there are very few side effects, and I'm able to go to work the following day. Another twist was on the biopsy. The result of the biopsy was that I had an urgent recall to see the oncologist, and the oncologist told me my cancer has changed. So because it's changed, it could jeopardise my placement on the trial. This initially was rather alarming, but then it came to light that the cancer has changed because it's gone from HER2 negative to positive, which means that my cancer is much more treatable. So because this is rarer than rare, they told me this is a really positive move. Their analogy of this was, now my drug choice is like a sweet shop full of drugs. So there's a lot more drugs that are available to treat my type of cancer. So I can't wait to get home. But throughout my experience, there's been so many downturns, but so many wonderful things that happened to do. So I just thought I'd like to share my story with you.
Exodus chapter 3 verses 1 to 15. Moses in the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, Say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation.
The plot of the book of Exodus centres on the relationship which develops between God and the Israelites. And in all of this, Moses acts as a mediator, the one who first makes God known to the people, and then who plays an important role in establishing the covenant relationship, which makes it possible for God to live in the midst of the Israelites. It's always God who takes the initiative, revealing himself not only through words but also through wonders and signs. God both speaks and acts, and what he says happens. Last week, when we looked at chapter 1, we saw how much this deliverer was needed. God had kept his promise to Abraham and multiplied his descendants. But Pharaoh took concrete steps to make sure that the growth of the Jewish people would be stopped. Even today, when the church is persecuted and oppressed, it often multiplies and spreads. In chapter 2, we saw how Moses was born and prepared for this lifetime's work as deliverer of the people of Israel. As is so often the case with God, this preparation didn't take a conventional form. After a rocky start where he nearly didn't survive infancy, Moses is given a model upbringing in the Egyptian palace. But he messes up. And as a runaway murderer, he escapes to Midian and spends 40 years working as a shepherd. Mark reminded us how loss and delay in our lives lead to greater dependence on God. And if we're willing to learn from him, enables him to shape us and mould us into the people he needs us to be, which is exactly what happens to Moses. There's a turning point at the very end of chapter 2, as we read that the Israelites' cry for help went up to God. In other words, the prayer of the people of God marked the beginning of their deliverance, because prayer brings God into the situation. And chapter 2 ends with the statement that God heard, God saw, and God was concerned. These words are echoed soon afterwards in verse 7 of the chapter 3, which we just heard. It was prayer that made all the difference. Even though on the surface, nothing seemed to change. Moses was still in Midian, and the people were still in the darkness of slavery. So now we come to chapter 3, and we see how this deliverer is called by God and appointed to the work that God had prepared in advance for him to do. God needs a shepherd for his people. So he appears to Moses, who was working as a shepherd, and he asks him to be his voice to the very people that Moses was running away from. God intends to use a criminal fugitive to lead his people out of slavery. And at the start of this chapter, Moses is completely unsuspecting that something huge is about to happen for his life and the life of his people. Notice in verse 1 that Moses was busy when God called him. He was just getting on with his everyday existence as a shepherd. And this is typical of God. Gideon was threshing grain. Samuel was serving in the tabernacle. David was also looking after sheep. Elisha was ploughing. 4 of the disciples were fishing. Matthew was collecting taxes. God intends for us to get on with what's in front of us and leave the timing to him. Little did Moses know that the Lord was training him for a life's work where he would shepherd the people of God. And it was in this context of daily faithfulness that God opened Moses' eyes to a heavenly vision, and his life changed forever. We're going to look at 3 aspects of this chapter. And firstly, what Moses saw. This is the first example in Exodus of the divine presence appearing as fire or smoke. This fire signifies the separateness of God. God's holiness is unapproachable, and yet he makes it clear what Moses has to do to be able to approach him. Simply take his shoes off. God is asserting his holiness, and yet at the same time he's making it possible for Moses to remain in his presence, though he still hides his face before such a holy God. This is a metaphor for the whole of Exodus, a holy God outlining the means by which the unholy can safely coexist with him. And indeed, it's a metaphor for the whole salvation story. Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Asked the psalmist. The answer lies, of course, in Jesus, who suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring us to God, whose blood gives us confidence to enter into the most holy place, and through whom we have access to the Father. The point of Moses taking off his shoes is a lesson in simple obedience. Our response is to bow humbly before whatever God may require of us, thanking him that he has made a way for us to be in his presence. It's also a useful reminder that Christian service or ministry of any kind always begins in the presence of the Lord. Why was John the Baptist in the wilderness until he appeared publicly to Israel? Why did Paul go away into Arabia until before he went into missionary service? Why did Jesus spend 40 days in the wilderness? Before we go out, we must come in. And so we see how the Lord brought Moses into the secret place of fellowship with himself before sending him out to Israel and Pharaoh. He says, come into my presence. Spend some time with me. Service begins in the presence of God. Spending time alone with our Lord. There are various ways of interpreting the meaning of the burning bush. Some people see it as a picture of the nation of Israel, God's light in the world, persecuted but not consumed. But it's also a representation of God himself, a flame nourished by its own life, needing no external fuel to feed it, a truly living flame, self-sufficient, self-sustaining, a living God. But the burning bush is also a picture of what God had planned for Moses. He was the weak bush, but God the empowering fire. And with God's help and transforming presence and power, Moses could accomplish anything. And Moses' initial reaction is extremely positive. Here I am. Later in Exodus chapter 19, we read how Moses later led the people back to the same mountain where they were all to see God in a powerful display of fire and smoke. Secondly, what Moses heard. Echoing the final verses of the previous chapter, God speaks. I've seen, I've heard, I'm concerned. God demonstrates his justice and compassion and acts out of real concern for the Israelites. God tells his people through Moses that he's going to rescue them. He's going to step in. And not only that, he's going to bring them out of slavery into the promised land. In other words, after 400 years of silence, during which they must have wondered where God was, if he still existed and whether he'd abandoned them, God speaks. And with these words, he gives them back their identity. That's still true today. Our suffering may not be on the same scale as that of the Israelites who lived in slavery for 400 years without ever having a day off, no doubt in extremely harsh conditions, without even being able to worship their God. And yet still, God sees, God hears, God is concerned. He cares about our suffering. He is not indifferent, and he intervenes with compassion and justice. But the sting in the tail for Moses is that God wants him to be part of this rescue plan. In verse 10, he says, I'm sending you. And Moses would have been astonished by this. Why would God choose a failure? Why would God choose a criminal, a murderer in exile from his country? Why would God choose someone who'd had a good start in life, thought he was doing the right thing by killing the Egyptian slave master to stick up for his fellow Israelite, but had got it so wrong? He'd let down his family, his people, and his God. He'd suffered huge loss. And And apparently he delayed God's rescue plan for 40 years. Not only that, but we know that Moses was getting on for 80 years old at this point. Surely he'd done enough for one lifetime. The fact is that God still chooses the unlikely. He still chooses people who don't think they have anything to offer, who don't feel they have the necessary skills or experience for the job, who've known failure and loss. And he chooses people who, in human terms, feel they have nothing left to contribute, especially after a year living with a pandemic. As with Moses, whatever God calls us to, whatever unknown situation he leads us into, we may rest assured that his gracious preparation has made us exactly right for the task. And finally, what Moses did. Having responded so positively to God's initial call, here I am. As he realizes the implications of what God is asking of him, Moses has serious second thoughts. What would he find if he returned to Egypt? Whom would he face? The older generation of Israelites who'd known him would have died off by this time. It must have seemed that God was asking him to stand up single-handedly to a superpower which he'd already proven that he couldn't beat. So what does Moses do? Well, he makes excuses not to obey God's call. And we see two of these excuses here in chapter 3. His first excuse is to ask, what, me? Or in other words, as it says in verse 11, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He expresses a profound sense of personal inadequacy. In other words, I'm a nobody. And notice God's answer. When Moses says, Lord, I can't do it, God doesn't say, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Instead, he says, no, you can't, but I will be with you. This is all the assurance God's servants need in order to succeed. We are inadequate, but God is eminently adequate. In other words, when Moses asks God, who am I? God replies by telling him who he, God, is. The answer to all our questions and doubts is not to be found in who we are, but in who God is. God says, I will be with you. He asks Moses to rest in the assurance of God's presence with him. What Moses thought of himself or what others thought of Moses really wasn't important. God had spoken, and that should have been all Moses needed to tell him that he was the right man for the job. And yet, he doubted. Had 40 years of shepherding extinguished the fire in his soul that he didn't think he could serve the Lord? Why was he looking at himself instead of looking by faith to God? Do you sometimes doubt yourself? Particularly after what we've been through over the last year? Or when you face a new or unknown challenge as we begin to start thinking about coming out of lockdown? I know I do. But what I think of myself and what others think of me is not important. God has spoken, and he says, I will be with you. And he asks us to believe his promise that he is enough. Moses' second excuse is to ask, who are you? I don't know your name. Moses asked God, what does your name mean? What kind of God are you? And God graciously answers. He is the self-sufficient one who always was, always is, and always will be. The faithful and dependable God who calls himself I am, or I am who I am. Yahweh in Hebrew is usually translated as the Lord in English. But the verb to be doesn't really capture how dynamic this word is. God's name is a living force, vital, personal. He is the key active ingredient in every situation. And yet God remains God and cannot be controlled or tamed by his people. What's more, his name doesn't change. Verse 15 says, "This is my name forever." He's the same from generation to generation. He's the Lord of the whole world and its history. What he'd done in the past, he was doing in the present, and he would continue to do in the future. To put this into context, the Israelites had been slaves in Egypt for 400 years. We don't know how they maintained their faith during this time, but somehow they had kept their identity as the people of God. So these words would have been so encouraging to them. And they welcomed Moses because he spoke about a God they knew and they'd heard about from their ancestors. 4 times in this chapter, God refers to himself as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, or the God of your fathers. This was to remind Moses and the people of Israel that God had not changed. He was and is still the God who calls people into the unknown, overcomes impossible odds to keep his promises, bothers with those who have tried and failed, and is the God who can take the unpromising material of our lives and transform it. In John chapter 8, Jesus says, "Before Abraham was born, I am," thereby claiming God's name for himself. He later took this name and completed it. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the good shepherd. I am the true vine. I am the gate. I am the resurrection. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Moses' obedience to God was rooted in his understanding of who God is. He is sufficient for all your fears, all your anxieties, all your challenges, known or unknown. When you know I am who I am is with you, you can relax. When we wobble or falter in our faith or in our walk with God, more often than not, it's because either we're asking, who am I? Looking inward and doubting our own abilities, or because we're asking God, who are you? And we've forgotten what a great God we belong to and follow. I've called Moses' responses excuses, but in one sense, he was just being real with God. We said earlier that ministry begins in the presence of God. And Moses used his time alone with God to unload all his hang-ups. And in this he sets us a good example, because there is nothing that we cannot bring to the Lord. Moses was an extraordinary person for God to want to use. A person with all those insecurities, weaknesses and inadequacies, so defensive and unwilling. But we're reminded that there is nothing we can't say to the Lord or share with him. We can even come to him and say, Lord, I don't want to. Because when we come into his presence, we have him to ourselves and he has us to himself. The fact is that Moses needed tons of reassurance, and every time God gave it to him with patience, understanding, promise and provision. I will be with you. I am who I am. Moses was chronically uncertain about himself. That episode in Egypt all those years ago must have really knocked the stuffing out of him. All the old bounce was gone, and the man who was not the prince of Egypt, but the shepherd of Midian, needed crowds of reassurance, tender loving care, and hand-holding. We can feel Moses' almost overwhelming insecurity. If Moses lives in our memories as the towering leader of Israel in deliverance and pilgrimage, it's well to remember where he started. Insecure, unprepared, unworthy, and almost everything else. It's good to remember how patiently the Lord took him time after time and ministered reassurance to him. The Lord didn't take away or even promise to take away Moses' nervousness or make him bold, but he did call him to a position of trust. When Moses was faced with his vocation to bring the Israelites out of Egypt, his reaction was, I can't, so I won't. The Lord sought to bring him to the point where he would say instead, I can't, but he can, so I will. This is the obedience of faith. And the God of Moses is our God too. Throughout this whole encounter, God is reminding Moses who he, God, is, and then asking Moses to trust him. Eventually, as we'll see next week, he does. If Moses can trust God, how much more can we who know Jesus and are filled with the Holy Spirit? Throughout the rest of his life, Moses follows God step by step, does the next thing God asks him to do. And that's what he asks of us too. God asks you, will you trust me? Will you obey me? I know you have questions and doubts about yourself and possibly about me too. I know you don't understand it all. I know you don't see the big picture, but I do, and that's enough. I am who I am, and you are you because of me. We're going to take a short time now just to respond, just to have some quiet in God's presence. And maybe you need to experience afresh what Moses saw. God's holiness, God's presence, God's power. Or maybe you need to hear afresh what Moses heard. God says, I see, I hear, I'm concerned about what you're going through. Receive again the compassion of God. Or maybe you sense God saying, I'm sending you. You may not yet know where, but we can be confident that when God calls, he equips. Or maybe you need to do what Moses did and be honest with God. Do you find yourself asking, who am I? Paul says that our life, our identity is hidden with Christ in God. His opinion is the only one that matters. He makes us adequate, and he promises, I will be with you. Or maybe you need to ask God again, who are you? And hear him say to you again, I am who I am. Lord Jesus, we want to say to you, I can't, but you can. So I will. We want to trust you. We want to obey you. We want to follow you. In your grace, in your mercy, in your love, and in the power of your Holy Spirit. Help us to do that. Amen.
You call me out upon the waters, great unknown. My feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in great unknown, my feet may fail.
Thank you so much for joining us for Sunday Online. I really hope that you've found God speaking to you and encouraging you and challenging you today. As we finish, I want to read a prayer to us. I want to say a prayer for us. And it's a prayer that we included in some cards that we sent out this week to our church members on Valentine's Day. So let me read this as we finish our time together. When you're tired, may you know God lifting you. When you're feeling unwell, may you know God's healing. When you're grieving, may you know God drawing close and collecting your tears. When you're celebrating, may you know God celebrating with you. Each and every day, may you know that you are loved with an everlasting love. Amen.
Amen.
Have a really great week, and we hope that you're able to tune in next Sunday for Sunday Online.